Chapter 15. It had been some time since Wayne Manor felt so full of anyone outside of the rare gala Bruce hosted. With Dick staying over again, Stephanie's regular trips in and out, and Barbara joining Bruce to look over their collected information, it felt like a big family reunion. All of it was owed to the struggle against the Seraphim and Cassandra's journey of faith. Every day for a week, Barbara and Bruce sat in the library, typing and searching through websites and gleaning different Bibles taken from its shelves. They searched constantly for some clue at what the tattooed man's words meant. The library itself was sprawling and grand, illuminated by lines of old chandeliers, decade-old but updated from candle to flame-like bulbs, and a bright red carpet covered the floor. It was rare that anyone but Alfred pulled books from its shelves, but the man's cryptic words shaped the quiet library into a new meeting space. Once in a while, Cassandra walked by, just to observe them at one of the large oak tables. She wanted to have something to offer. She had been reading the Bible herself, after all, but had no ideas. Alfred brought refreshments and sometimes retrieved Cassandra for her studies. Sometimes Dick or Tim would walk by, usually with another suggestion that would lead to a dead end, only further frustrating anyone. Saul was the first king of the Jews, Bruce muttered to himself for the 1000th time, and his father's name was Kish. That's literally almost all there is. He was a Benjamite, but I doubt that means anything either. But maybe they meant David because they see him as the first real king, Barbara suggested. But even then, his father was a shepherd, and I don't have any idea what that would have to do with anything. What about Jesus? Dick asked. He's God incarnate, meaning he's old as time itself. Hard to be much more first king than that. He had 2 fathers, Bruce said, and one of them wouldn't be referred to as a separate entity in an appeal. The other was a carpenter. I'm not ruling it out, but unless they intend to give up this crusade and hide out in Egypt, I can't imagine what that might be referencing. What it might be referencing? Barbara's frustration boiled over. Bruce, I think you're giving these psychopaths too much credit. You know what the difference between someone like that guy on the street and somebody like the Riddler is? Easy there, Babs, Dick said. No, I mean it. Nigma drops hints that have clear answers. Maybe you need to twist the Rubik's Cube to get there, but the answer is almost always clean at the end of the day. A riddle that you could ask a normal person if it wasn't a life-threatening situation. This, she pressed a finger toward the Bible in front of her, this is enough to span half the population on the planet if you count the parts that Islam follows, and there are literally thousands of subsections of Christianity arguing over what it all means. There isn't a clear answer there, Bruce. It's why we haven't found it yet, and why I haven't been to church since I could use my freaking legs. Everyone went quiet as Cassandra had been since she walked in. Dick contemplated Barbara's words and embittered reply before he said, Maybe she's right, Bruce. We're not dealing with normal religious extremists here. We're dealing with a guy who named himself after some angel nobody who didn't watch Dogma has ever heard of. He thinks he's descended from a man who went to heaven and came back from it, and an English alchemist who claimed to know the language of the angels. Maybe this isn't going to make any sense until whatever insane thing they do next. We finally have a lead on him, Bruce said. He's spilled too much blood on my streets to get away with this any longer. I'm going to find out what he meant, and I'm going to track him down. The 4 were silent again before Cassandra finally spoke up, thinking back on her studies with Stephanie over the last weeks. Could be deception, like Samson and Delilah. She thought back on Stephanie's reading of the story, and the way she stopped to groan. Come on, she tried to sell you out twice. I know I can't change the story, but I just can't believe he actually tells her about his stupid hair. But even then, all that tells us is he's willing to lie. That's even less helpful, Bruce said. Maybe he just didn't want to tell the truth to a dirty gypsy. Dick rolled his eyes. Or be beaten by a woman, like, Cassandra stopped and tried to recall the way the name was pronounced. Everyone gave her a look. Who are you talking about, Cassie? Barbara asked. Stephanie didn't know how to pronounce it. Was disguised. She sighed. Don't remember. Well, it probably isn't important, Dick said. What's bigger right now is figuring out what he could have been referencing with that prayer of his. I'll look it up, Barbara said. We're not getting anything else done any faster. What was the name? Abimelech? Cassandra said, surprised she remembered. Stephanie's consistent bitter remarks about sexism were all that made him stick out in her mind. They didn't read his whole life story. It was just suggested they read a little while they went over the Judges of Israel. Then the two skipped ahead to the part suggested by Stephanie's companion book. Abimelech? Barbara said. Cassandra nodded. Says here... Wait a sec. She adjusted her glasses a little and leaned in close to her laptop. What is it, Babs? His name means... My father is king. Bruce gave a sharp look in her direction before he rose from the chair and stood just beside her as she read. Abimelech, son of the judge Gideon, killed his 70 brothers. She froze for a moment and tried to take in the words before she continued. Crowned king of Israel by the men of Shechem and the house of Milo. Son of Gideon? Then that was long before David and Saul, Bruce said. Not to mention the scale of Gideon's own military accomplishments. It now makes too much sense. But why didn't that ever come up? We've been searching all over the place. Abimelech was never a true king in the canon, but he was the first person to have something close to resembling the title. If we're right, this can only mean the Seraphim means to borrow Gideon's battle strategy. His battle strategy? Dick said. Sorry, you're gonna have to fill me in on that one. Not many Sunday schools travel in a circus caravan. Sneak in, cause a horrible din, and watch the enemy destroy itself in a fit of mad confusion. Bruce grit his teeth a little. They couldn't possibly be planning to come here, could they? Barbara asked. Judging by what they told Dick, they hate you, but they don't know our identities or anything. I'm sure they don't, Bruce said, but it's not us I'm worried about. The story goes they slipped into the enemy camp, just a few at a time, not many in total. It was the place where the enemy was comfortable, where a sneak attack would devastate them most. They all waited anxiously for him to continue before he finally said, We need to start taking shifts at Arkham and Blackgate. Those are going to be his targets. That's where he's going to smash open his clay pots and scream like he's waking the dead, hoping madmen will run about and slaughter one another. He won't even have to get his hands dirty. The words were chilling as another piece of the Seraphim's puzzle finally snapped into place. In silence, the words were contemplated for several minutes before a "Hey there" from Stephanie, led in by Alfred, finally broke them. She smiled toward both Dick and Barbara, but took notice of their unease as she made her way to Cassandra. Are you busy right now? We can get started if you're not. Is everyone okay? Steph, I don't know what you're teaching her, but keep at it, Dick said. I think your little Bible study might have helped us find out what the Seraphim's doing next. Stephanie laughed a little and gave him a smile. Thanks, Dick. Can I borrow her then? Go ahead, Bruce said. But I want you both in costume tonight when the sun goes down. If we have made a breakthrough, we need to start covering more ground. Will do. Stephanie motioned to Cassandra, and the two stepped out of the library. Thank you, Cassandra said. What, was it getting grating in there listening for the 100th time? Stephanie asked. No, what you're teaching me. It helped. A lot. Well, always happy for that, she grinned. I like your smile. Always have, Cassandra said, showing her a little one of her own. Yeah, and I like yours. Seems like we've been seeing a little more of it lately, too. Maybe all the soul-searching really is doing you some good. Cassandra opened the door to her room, and the two sat, once again at the desk as Stephanie opened Cassandra's Bible. She turned to a page increasingly close to the back and sighed a little. We're going to do the most important reading in here next week, so you can go to that thing with Tim. I'm going to tell you right now, this might be hard. You got to talk to me if you're really troubled, okay? You might have a lot of questions. All right, Cassandra sat down. Is this when he dies? I will finally know why? It only struck her as she said it how terrible that sounded, especially after what they'd already read. Yeah, the death and, more importantly, the resurrection, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. You ready? As Cassandra nodded, she began to read. Jesus comes to Jerusalem as king.